Good evening from London, wrestling fans. I'm your host, Ben Allison, and you are listening to Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast, your one-stop shop for professional wrestling, insight, news, and reviews on a daily basis. It's Mailbag Monday, and you know what that means. You guys have submitted, once again, some great questions via our Instagram stories. And we have a lot to get into and to answer today. It's going to be a really fun show. I'm looking forward to it. And he is back. He's back from the wedding he attended. Clark, how are you today?
I've missed you guys. I'm stoked to be back. Obviously, you can see I'm ready to go for the big Monday night game, the rematch. I'm just going to get my comments out on this really quickly. I'm pretty confident the younger Kelsey, the cool uncle, and Patty Mahomes are just going to let the big dogs run wild once again on the Philadelphia Eagles. But that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about some pro wrestling. And we got some awesome questions. I was stoked rewatching Full Gear once I got back from the wedding yesterday morning. Awesome show. We're not really going to cover that, but I did enjoy it. I am just super stoked to be back. What a great Monday. And go Chiefs.
Absolutely. Come on, Chiefs. Tonight, they will beat Philadelphia, and they will do it with the help of Taylor Swift. Also joining us today, we have the guy who was supporting the wrong team this evening, Shad. Shad, how are you today?
Bro, what did I walk into with this handicap match, huh? Where's my Let me call my man Anthony and Josh real quick. It's Fly Eagles Fly season, best fan base in the entire world. Like my man number one over here, Jalen Hurts says, let's keep the main thing the main thing. Let's get into this podcast. But Fly Eagles Fly, we getting revenge tonight, man. But I'm happy to be here. Happy to see y'all too.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a fun show. We got a comment from Bobby Petito. Hello, Bobby. I hope you are well. And we're going to be answering your question a little later on, I believe. But let's get straight into things. And let's firstly answer a question from @Lee, I believe, on Instagram. There might be some underscores in there sometimes. The copy and paste format doesn't seem to work. But they are asking, what is the best rivalry of all time? And this is a very hard question to answer on a Monday, but a very, very good question indeed. Now, for me personally, I'm going to go with the basic answer, I guess, and say Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker. But my relationship with this feud, I think, is very different to a lot of people's because, of course, I was a child when this feud was happening, right? I remember I didn't even watch the original Taker, well, not the original, the WrestleMania 25 Taker Shawn match until like about 6 or 7 months after it happened. But because my parents didn't allow me to buy it on pay-per-view, I first read about it and saw all the like pictures from it and all of that, and that was enough to make me excited. And I thought Shawn was going to break the streak, and he did not. But then a year later, Elimination Chamber, I was convinced Undertaker was going to retain. I thought nobody in this match is going to be able to win. No way. Absolutely not. He just beat Rey Mysterio. He just squashed Rey Mysterio almost at the Royal Rumble. No way will Undertaker lose. Well, Elimination Chamber went down and Shawn Michaels came through the cage and took out Undertaker, and Chris Jericho was world champion. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. And as a kid, that just drew me in, and I was so excited. WrestleMania 26. I thought Shawn was going to do it. I was convinced. I thought to myself, no way is his career over. But it was. It was a very, very sad moment for me as a kid. But it was storytelling done right. It absolutely was. Absolutely beautiful moment in wrestling history. I just wish Shawn didn't return for that tag match in Saudi Arabia a couple of years ago. But Clark, what about you? What is your favorite rivalry of all time?
You know, Ben, that's an outstanding call. And I loved that one. And it goes all the way back for me to the first Hell in a Cell match that I saw between Shawn and Taker at Bad Blood. In my eyes, it's still never been topped. It's just amazing. I'm also gonna stay though. And I thought about so many rivalries, old school ones, Dusty and Ric Flair. I thought about so many rivalries when it came to this subject. But I'm gonna stick with The Undertaker myself. And I actually have Undertaker and his brother Kane. We talk often here at Wrestling Republic about storytelling and how valuable it is to professional wrestling. This story and its longevity is the best story told from a rivalry perspective I've ever seen in my life. From the very first time Paul Bear stepped on screen and we'd never seen Kane, I just mentioned that match at Bad Blood, right? We know what happens at the end of that match. The debut of Kane. As great as Michaels and Taker is, that rivalry built an even larger one because over the course of years, yes, we got the Brothers of Destruction, and that was beautiful. But fighting your own brother in the way that they did during WrestleMania season, every time building to having Paul Bear, your manager, the guy that you showed up to the dance with, leave for your younger brother and tell the family story as gnarly as it was all the way up. That rivalry is my all-time favorite, whether it be the WrestleMania 20 Return of the Dead Man, whether it be the brief time teaming as the Brothers of Destruction, or the Bad Blood debut, coupled with the payoff over at WrestleMania 14 when you finally had Kane, while he got to Tombstone, baseball Hall of Famer Pete Rose, not Hall of Famer, baseball legend Pete Rose. So he got him there. While he got to do that, Undertaker got his comeuppance. I think Kane only beat Taker once. This rivalry was never short of compelling, though. And Kane was the most believable opponent to the Undertaker's power of all time. It covered 20 years in wrestling. And as soon as you got in a rut, you could pick it back up for either character easily because of the brotherhood, because of the way it was told, and the physical matching that you had between stars the size of Undertaker and Kane. In my eyes, it's the best pure rivalry of all time as far as execution is concerned.
Wow, I mean that is a phenomenal choice. It really, really is. I mean I'm gonna say though on that one, right? This is a hot take, but like I do feel almost like that rivalry, watching it at the time, you can't really go back and watch it for it to feel the same. Because when I've gone back and I've watched it, it just does not hit the same to me as I think it did to, a lot of people. And admittedly, I was first, exposed to this rivalry when it was, in the later stages of it.
And so
And at
that's
that
one
point,
thing I
it
will
wasn't
say
great.
is
And then, yeah.
a lot was played out on Raw.
Yeah,
The matches aren't what made this the rivalry. The matches are not what made this my choice. And it's not that they had bad matches by any means, right? The Inferno match was difficult to execute. There's no question. It was a cool concept and whatnot. I'm purely storytelling wise, the way the rivalry was played out, and when they rolled out the caskets with both of their parents, it was there was no more vitriol or hatred than in this rivalry in the late 90s. And especially at the time, it was jarring. It was jarring. I remember going to a house show as a kid and being afraid after the lightning strike on the casket because of Kane. Being afraid.
They did that alive.
Of yes, but
wow.
I genuinely because of that. We're going to the show and I was like, we're safe from Kane. Genuinely. At the time, right?
I was terrified of Kane as a child.
I was going to the show with my mother and father. I was genuinely asking in the car, we're safe from Kane in the seats.
I had the exact same experience, but with me, it was CM Punk shaving heads. I didn't want to go to
I don't want my head shaved
events because I didn't want my head shaved. But what about you, Shad? What is your greatest rivalry of all time?
That's funny. Man, this was a tough one. There's a lot of great historic rivalries in professional wrestling. I mean, I even thought about CM Punk and John Cena as a potential one. Um, as well as Edge's rivalries with Cena, Orton, and then you got a long list of Shawn Michaels, Bret the Hitman Hart. But I had to go with the most iconic wrestling rivalry, and to kind of what Clark's point is, one that is relatable in the standpoint of us growing up as we become adults, and that's that rivalry between worker versus boss, and that is Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Vincent Kennedy McMahon. One that was very prevalent for me as a child, late in the '90s, and you just see the egotistic owner of Vince McMahon doing everything in his way to keep that leadership and sort of in a evil manner to the viewer versus the guy who's resilient, who's the badass, who's gonna go against the boss, rage against the machine per se, with him throwing the kitchen sink at him, within creating different factions to stop him. So many different rivalries intertwined because of Vince McMahon, and of course them having their own bouts amongst each other, and giving us just a lot of classic moments. Like, who doesn't forget like the viral moment that still is today of Stone Cold Steve Austin going in the hospital and just beating Vince McMahon uh, in his hospital bed. I feel like they were able to make so good within that, and I think we spoke about it on a Throwback Thursday before. Like Vince McMahon, to how you feel about him obviously as a person, but we're talking within a character base. He's arguably one of the greatest heels in professional wrestling. uh and he made everybody hate him as that character throughout that time, and it really transcended and made you appreciate and love Stone Cold Steve Austin, because you just looked up to that sort of figure going against him. I could spend all day naming moments, man. Like we even talked about it last week with the whole corporate rock, but we saw Austin coming in upon that. The Royal Rumble moments. Like there's so many different moments that they had. Man, we could even talk about when Stone Cold hit him with the stunner a couple years ago at Mania with that bad sell job by Vince. But I feel like that's like the marquee rivalry storyline in professional wrestling, in my opinion. And that's my GOAT rivalry of all time.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that is one of those where it brought so many more eyes to WWE. I mean, at that time, it was when things flipped. WCW went from winning to losing. It really did. This was a rivalry which it changed WWE, changed the landscape of professional wrestling massively. And I think even though the feud itself was just amazing, I think the historical element of it makes it almost just even more important, because obviously we know that it kind of changed everything for WWE, this feud, as well, between them, with Stone Cold basically representing about how a lot of people felt about their bosses, right? And Stone Cold was like, nope, I'm gonna give you a Stone Cold Stunner, and it connected with the audience really, really well. And it's also something which number one Superfly agrees with, and he is saying that for him it is between Stone Cold and The Rock, or Stone Cold and Vince McMahon.
Stone Cold he's one of my goats, man. Like he might be my goat. He
I love it.
takes you to a place of relatability as a character, and like just he's just a man. He's probably one of the coolest wrestlers of all time, if
He's
not the
in his
coolest
own
wrestler of
way
all
an
time.
action hero. I feel like
Yeah.
compared to other heroes that we had, that I think was where he transcended. People talked about, like at the time, like, oh, he's not a traditional baby face, he's or baby face.
Mm.
He's the anti-hero, right?
Hmm.
But really, to me, he was more of like the action hero, where it's like, he's maybe a little flawed, but there's just so much there where like when he stuns McMahon, we always joke it's the worst stunner ever.
Yeah.
But when he gets down on the ground, like, and gets
In
in his
his
face and starts yelling
face,
at him, that is like
flipping
the
the
little
birds.
things like that. Those images are just Iconic. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's funny too, because you talk about the rivalries we kind of all picked, right? Ben, and I love the Undertaker Michaels series. It's outstanding, obviously,
Mm.
right? Like nearly impossible to beat. But it's really about the matches and the moments. The
Mhm.
two that me and Shad picked, it's really funny, from the 90s. Mr. McMahon Stone Cold in the ring was,
More, no, it's definitely more
yeah,
about moments than matches per se. If you're talking
Undertaker
about
Kane was,
matches, HBK and Hart is probably the
No,
best
no, but here's the thing about it, though.
match for me.
Truthfully, right? Yeah, I mean that's another one which
Michaels
you can
Bret
mention,
Hart would have been that's
and
spot on.
Flair Steamboat as well. But I mean,
Steamboat
here's the
too.
thing with
Yes.
Michael's Taker for me. I was such a young kid that I didn't really appreciate the in-ring work. And this, like, is why I always go on about this story. For me, it was the moments back then. I mentioned already, the super kick
Yeah.
in the Elimination Chamber. And the fact that Shawn put his career on the line
But see,
and
that's in
lost.
ring, not on the mic, is more my point, I guess. You
Oh,
see what
yeah,
I'm saying?
that's
Not
true.
to
Yeah,
cut you
yeah,
off, man, right? Like,
yeah.
you see what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no,
it was
that,
played
that's
out
true.
in ring primarily, almost.
But the thing is, I didn't know at the time, like, how. Like, I didn't know Shawn Michaels' age. I didn't know, he was going to be retiring soon. So I was just in complete and utter shock. I just could not believe it. I was like, why on earth in your prime would you retire? This is awful. Please come back. And obviously, he did come back many years later, but that's another note. But I mean, one thing, Chad, you brought up Stone Cold. We brought up, the amount of amazing rivalries he had. And obviously, his career wasn't short. But his
Mhm.
career ended. Like, he was younger than AJ Styles was when AJ Styles made his WWE debut, when
Right.
Stone Cold had to retire, which is just a crazy statistic as well.
Mhm.
And in
It's
his
what you
short career,
it's what you do in the time, man.
it is.
That's
And he
kind of
did
what
it.
it is.
Yeah.
I
He
look at CM Punk
certainly
that
did
way
it.
too within his time in WWE. It wasn't super long,
Yeah.
but it was a historical time frame while he was in WWE.
Yeah.
We didn't even
Yeah,
mention Stone
absolutely.
Cold Bret Hart, by the way, which led to the Owen Hart, which is the injury that did put him out. If you really think about it, the tombstone, rest in peace, Owen Hart. Obviously, a huge mistake, but that neck injury is what at that time put Austin out in a way that he had miles left.
Yeah.
And
No,
performed.
absolutely.
He actually even performed at his peak, not at his own physical peak, which is a fascinating thing to look at in hindsight about Stone Cold.
No, he really, truly, truly is. But something else that's fascinating is when we speculate about fantasy booking. And let's do that right now, because at underscore. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm really bad with these names, aren't I? At
Atharva?
underscore at Harva 5107 underscore on Instagram is asking, do you think Jade Cargill can debut at War Games as the 5th member against Damage Control? Now, of course, as we know, it is currently 4-on-4 in the women's match for War Games. Dakota Kai isn't meant to, be back yet. We don't know when she's going to be back. She's still obviously in the knee brace, but she's traveling. She's there every week. Who knows? Maybe she has made a quicker recovery than some expected, and she will be joining the War Games match. And I'd be delighted if that was the case, because call me old-fashioned, call me traditional, but I like my Survivor Series matches to be 5-on-5. The men's looks like it will be. And I mean, I think the women should be too. I really, truly, truly do. It's always been 5v5. Let's just keep it that way. We can make it War Games. I'm all good with that. We're adding a bit of a modern I say modern spice. Obviously, War Games is older. But, we're freshening it up a bit. I have no issue with that. Triple H knows what he's doing. But, come on, let's keep it 5v5. That's my statement on the matter. But, should Jade Cargill be the 5th one? Absolutely, she should, in my opinion. If that is the case, I mean, to be honest, she kind of made more sense than Becky to me. But, Clark, what do you think on this one?
Can is the key in this question, and it's a really, really, really good question. Can she? Sure. Should she? I don't think so. And I'll answer the can she. The answer is yes. Very simply put. Should she? No, because that is damage that Damage Control cannot control. Absolutely not. And if we're going to debut Jade Cargill, we need to do it the right way. And Jade Cargill is going to come in like a house of fire and just being inserted as a team member in a, I don't want to say throwaway, but in a spot like, oh, she's the fifth. No reason, no build to that. No. Jade Cargill the red carpet needs to roll out for Jade Cargill. This is the most talented, or I'm sorry, not talented, well, both charismatic women or male professional wrestler I've ever seen debut since Goldberg. As far as like just natural charisma is concerned, as soon as Jade steps on the screen, everybody looks at Jade. As soon as her music hits, everybody looks at Jade because she just commands attention and it'll take away from the rest of the match. So can she? Yes. Should she? I think no.
That is, I absolutely, I see your point, and so does Numero One Superfly, who's in the comments saying that he doesn't think she should debut because she might have a hard time in the match if she was in that position. He'd rather have her debut in the Royal Rumble, and if she is in the Royal Rumble, she should maybe even win it, to be honest, because like you said, Clark, they need to roll out that red carpet. Jade Cargill deserves it. Jade Cargill is that level. Jade Cargill is her. But now let's move on, and let's move on to talk about AEW, All Elite Wrestling, because at Savage Brock 14 on Instagram is asking who else should be in the AEW Continental Classic. Of course, we know the tournament will be starting this Wednesday on Dynamite. I'm not going to complain, but I will say this. Why haven't they announced the full bracket before the tournament begins? Ugh. That's making me angry. But I am so excited for this tournament. Tony Khan said there's going to be no interruption, just great wrestling. He responded to the complaints over, the main event of Full Gear being overbooked, which I think in a lot of people's opinion, including myself, it was. He responded to those claims saying, well, if that's the case, then tune in Dynamite, tune in Collision, tune in Rampage for the next, 6 weeks. Because we're just going to be getting wrestling. We're just going to be getting those matches, technical masterclasses without any interference. So people just can't complain. And I mean, I'm excited. I really am. I said this when we were talking about it a few weeks ago. I think we need a few young names in there, but I also think we need well-established talent. I'm going to actually cheat. I'm going to give two names. One person who's not well established, and that's Lee Moriarty. He's somebody who's just been exceptional for years now. I interviewed him years ago. He's a top guy. And second, a more well established name, Kenny Omega. I know he's in the thing with Jericho at the minute. I know. But Kenny Omega in the G1s was just superb. I want to see him in this tournament. Shard, very quickly, who are the two? Who is one name who you want to see in the tournament?
One person that I want to see as AEW is molding back and getting to their grassroots of how they do stuff on TV is a person I saw initially in the beginning of them, and we haven't seen him in a while. A renowned champion, two-time TBS champion. Let's get Scorpio Sky back in the mix. We haven't seen him on television for a little while since he had a match on Collision. He's super skilled in ring, incredible person that can talk on the mic and character work. I feel like he would be a great addition to have onto this tournament, and getting him back in the fold. I think he can mix and match with a lot of great competitors that you have that you can add on it, even the people that you've initially announced so far. So yeah, I'm going with Scorpio Sky.
That is a very strong choice, Clark. What about you?
I'm going to get funky here because I can. I'm going to call a name out, and he probably won't have or be able to go out as the name that I'm going to say. But Dolph Ziggler, because stylistically speaking, we have not seen him be able to do that. But we're talking about a guy that was, All-American at Kent State, collegiate wrestler, bell to bell. We know he can work. He's one of the best at selling in the business. In this scenario, we might actually see some of his most sublime bell to bell work. I would love to see Dolph in this match. And honestly, I'll throw in another one, also from the WWE, or formerly, I guess now he technically can still work, but John Morrison. Johnny, or Johnny, whatever you want to call him now, right? I would not mind in the least under these settings in a singles tournament and with the round robin, you're just going to get great in-ring content and in-ring quality. We know we're going to have the rest of the AEW roster that we all kind of can predict in a weird way involved in this tournament. You have two names like that who are a little bit unexpected, and that's where you have performances that can not only reestablish them as stars outside of the WWE, but remind you that the talent isn't just what we've seen in the past.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I really am excited for this one. I could not be more excited for this tournament. And we got a few comments, and I'm going to read these out loud, thank God. Bobby is saying Daniel Garcia and Lee Moriarty as well. And Numero One Superfly is saying for the tournament, he'd like to see Daniel Garcia. That's a common trend. A lot of people do want to see Daniel Garcia, Miro, Malachi Black, Claudio Castagnoli, Pat Pock, if he returns. I'd be down for that. And Takeshita. I mean, all of those great names. I'd love to see all of them. And Carl Fletcher too. Great shout, Bobby. But now let's move on. And let's move on to talk about Major League Wrestling. Because at Bobby B910, Bobby Batito is saying that if Jacob Fatu ever wrestled in WWE, who would you guys like to see him go up against? And this one is very, very interesting. Shad, take it away. Who would you like to see Jacob Fatu face?
Well, first and foremost, shout outs to Matt Williams because he says I look like Jacob Fatu. I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult, but what's good, Oos? I'm a big fan of Jacob Fatu. I think he's an incredible talent. I think he's got superstar potential, and he does great work on MLW. And we know that he is coming from a lineage of family. So if I was to get him on WWE, I would selfishly first like to see him debut on NXT. So me, Clark, and Drizzy can talk about him on off the air all the time. And I would like to see him initially have a title feud versus Carmelo Hayes. I feel like their styles could work really well against each other. Jacob Fatu is a heavy, but he moves very nimble. He is very athletic, and I've seen him have matches against people of Carmelo Hayes' stature end up being banger of matches. I think both of them are great characters as well. I feel like they could definitely give you a feud that could be one for the books. If you keep them on NXT for a little bit, him and Braun Breaker, Clash of the Titans, right? Two beast, two like forces that could go against each other. Two guys that are coming from different bloodlines. Speaking of bloodline, we're gonna move him to the main roster. Jacob Fatu being rough around the edges, being a bit of a problem child, being a bit of an anti-hero. I would like to see him feud against his bloodline. Maybe you can see him, pair with Jay and go against a Jimmy, him feuding with Solo. But ultimately, I would want to see a feud between him and Roman Reigns. If you could potentially get Jacob Fatu and build him up, I feel like him and Roman could have a feud for the books. Jacob Fatu is so raw, or like organic. He's so different than Roman. He's like the bad cousin, right? He the one that don't hang around him. I know he's your cousin. He's not a good kid. I feel like you can play off that. You can play off the history of real life scenarios, and I feel like you could have an incredible feud. If besides that, there's so many great matches, man. Him and Drew McIntyre could be a lot of fun. Um, him versus Bronson Reed would be a dope match on TV. The possibilities are endless, but I want to see him and Roman. So those are just a bit of an idea that I have for Mr. Jacob Fatu if he was ever to go to WWE.
Those are some great points, Shard. And you mentioned the bloodline, right? Of course, Jacob Fatu was interviewed by Eric Novak on the All Real Wrestling podcast a couple of weeks ago, and Jacob Fatu explained, he was in jail, and he was watching the Usos debut in WWE. And that was kind of a moment which changed a lot of things for him, and really, inspired him to end up becoming a professional wrestler. I would just love it, right? If they just had somehow, he was a free agent now, they brought him in, put him right on the main roster to feud with one guy before WrestleMania, heading into the Royal Rumble, and that guy being Jey Uso. Have Jacob Fatu come in. You could say he was not hired by the Bloodline, but he was brought in by the elders of the Bloodline to back up Roman Reigns, and Jacob Fatu to just say to Jey Uso, you guys inspired me. You and your brother inspired me, and then you turned on him. How can you turn on your bloodline? And then those two end up, feuding and all of that. But then after they feud, Jey goes on a feud with Jimmy heading into WrestleMania, and at WrestleMania, Solo Sikoa tries to help Jimmy Uso get the win over Jey. And then Jacob Fatu switches because Jey had already earned his respect, and he evened the odds so Jey Uso can get the victory at WrestleMania. That would just be something I personally would just absolutely love to see. There is such a storyline there, and of course also Jacob Fatu in the interview with Wrestling Republic's Eric Novak, he said that WWE and AEW called him like the day after he signed his MLW contract. Like, thanks a lot, guys, like if you called me 2 days ago, but that was quite an interesting and funny point which he said during the interview. If you haven't seen it, make sure check it out on the All Real Wrestling podcast YouTube channel. Numero 1 Superfly, would love to see him go up against Roman Reigns, Braun Breaker, or Drew McIntyre.
You said all the people I said too.
Great minds think alike. Bobby Petito believes it should be Dragunov or Trick Williams.
I don't mind either of those.
Or Karrion Kross or LA Knight. All interesting ones, them. But now let's move on. Let's have a discussion, because this is a very good question, right? And this was submitted by @jacob.vl on Instagram, and he was asking, how can TNA make themselves feel different to WWE and AEW in order to bring in those viewers? It's no secret, wrestling content. I don't want to say there's too much of it right now, but we're not far off that. Because AEW, Collision, Rampage, they're both not getting good ratings. And I believe part of that isn't just, the criticisms of the show, but I believe part of it is just there's too much wrestling on. It's not good enough to just have an extra wrestling show in the week now, because most people don't have that time. You need to do something to make your show stand out. And of course, you guys know me, I'm a graphic designer, right? I think in a very visual way. And one of the ways in which, you can make yourself feel different is by looking different. We know they're not going to bring back the 6-sided ring. I would have loved them to bring back that 6-sided ring, but they said they're not going to do it, and fair enough. It puts a lot more on the wrestlers' bodies. I'm not going to criticize them for that. But what they should do is make the experience, the in-arena experience, feel different. Obviously, their production needs to improve. That's a no-brainer, and they said they're going to do it. Let's hope they do it. But I also think they need to do their Impact Wrestling shows in just crazy places, right? I really, really do. AEW, I really, hope that they would. And at the start, they kind of did. Daly's place felt unique, and so did the Jericho Cruise episode that they did as well. But as time went on, they kind of got too big, right? They needed bigger arenas and all of that. Impact Wrestling right now, its crowds are usually 1,000 to 2,000. They really could go and they could go run a shopping mall. They could just do a show out in the desert or something like that. They could, I don't even know. You can just do so many things which will just look very, very different, look interesting, make people switch over and then be like, actually, this is quite enjoyable. But I don't even think that would be enough. Shad, I'm going to pass this one to you first. How can TNA make themselves feel different enough for people to just be like, okay, I need to turn off Friday Night SmackDown. I need to turn off AEW Dynamite. Not watch that this week. Get my work done on those days and free up Thursday night for TNA wrestling.
I think they need to go fishing and get a big fish. I think that's the main thing. I feel the biggest I'll say the biggest, I won't say fault, but a disadvantage they have is they don't have as many eyes on them, and a lot of that has to go with what their roster is. I think they have an amazing roster. I think they have their own distinct style and look now. I think they've revamped it well, but I feel like they do lack some star power on their roster. I feel like, you're re-imaging this entire brand. Feel like you got to open the checkbook and you have to try to cover the big free agent. I think signing Trinity was a strong one. I think you need a couple more of those. I think you need to, try to look at who's in the free agent pool and say, hey, we have money here. We are rebranding. We're showing that this is a new version of what was one of the most interesting wrestling promotions during the 2000s era after WCW left, and garner that, get a person. There's a guy named Phil Brooks out there, right? Why not throw some money at him? Tell him, look, you're a person that has a vision. We trust your vision. Let's get you on here. That's gonna bring a lot of eyes over there. So I think if you can cover a couple big name free agents, there's guys who've been let go of AEW and WWE. Get them on there, revamp the roster a little bit, mix it in with the young stars you do have. I think they do a phenomenal job with their women's division, as always, and just kind of go from there. And the second thing is, like you said, yeah, I feel like where you are having shows, I feel the production value is one thing, but the crowd doesn't look compelling when you have the shows. It does kind of look smaller, empty, more of an intimate scene. I feel like you could go to places where you can garner more people to come in and they'll look good for the production value, um, as well as just having better production in general. So all of that, I think they can tie in. I don't think they will be a threat to WWE or AEW. Their best bet is to be the third brand, go against the New Japan, MLW, or whatever it may be. But I feel like they could be a strong alternative if they kind of go in that direction and, gather more people to want to watch them and whatnot.
I'm gonna be honest here. I'm just not sure anymore if being a third brand, you can really make much money being a third brand. I think WWE and AEW have taken so much of the market that I just don't think there's much, time for other consumers to, find time to watch it.
I agree
And
with that.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, I don't even think signings is going to solve their problem. Because unless it is CM Punk, right? CM Punk's the exception. If they sign CM Punk, eyes are coming over. Same for Mercedes Moné, right? If you got CM Punk, Mercedes Moné, Dolph Ziggler, and Mustafa Ali, add that to their already stacked roster, maybe they've got a chance. But even then, like the market's so cornered right now that they are the bigger fish are getting bigger and the smaller ones are looking smaller. That is the situation which they're in right now. I want nothing more than for TNA Wrestling to succeed, but I'm just not sure how it can when AEW are putting on 3 wrestling shows a week, plus Ring of Honor. WWE are putting on at least 3 wrestling shows per week with a pay-per-view pretty much every weekend from one of the brands. I don't know where there's space for TNA to succeed. I really, really don't. And I want to be so wrong about this. I really, really do. But I just don't know what the answer is. Because even if you bring in talents, I mean, they've done it tons in recent years. They did it during the pandemic tons. It brought them eyes for 2 weeks each time. And then people just tuned out again because there's just not enough time in a week. Clark, do you have the solution?
This is funky. There's only one. So look, it's a 20-year-old brand that's been awesome, and they've managed to stay afloat over 20 years. You look back at it from a business perspective, tons of memories and tons of entertainment, and they've also managed to pay their talent. I've never in my life heard that TNA or Impact didn't pay talent, didn't pay out employees, or didn't do any of that. So they have managed to stay afloat as a business in the middle of the road. To me, it's like they can be a third brand and function as that, except for if you look at the ownership part of it, right? The peak being that they were at Spike TV and on Spike TV. That's the peak of TNA, historically speaking, right? They're on a network that Raw was on within, 18 months of them getting that deal for the original Impact show. That was a huge deal. That was the closest they've been to an actual challenger brand. But TNA has never functioned as a challenger brand because of the ownership changes. Everybody in TNA, generally speaking, has made money outside of the selling and buying of the company. Ownership doesn't change that often because everyone else isn't making money. Otherwise, the brand would be dead. Correct? And so the way I look at it is, unless you're getting an angel investor to compete financially, the only avenue is to go against the grain. You have to do different than what the big two, AEW and WWE, are doing. And that would be cater directly to the hardcore fan base. So Ben, you had mentioned go out in the desert, go out in a field, do that. Cater directly to the hardcore fan base as best you absolutely can, because there is clearly enough money in TNA to sign wrestlers we all enjoy. There is an amazing roster at TNA, incredible talent, right? Really good writers, really good wrestlers. I say it all the time. Probably the best booked women's division in all of wrestling. In all of wrestling. Cater directly to the hardcore fan base. Go against the grain. Everyone else is trying to capture the other viewer. Right now, to do that, cater directly to that fan base, because the only people that are going to go seek out ways to watch TNA right this second is the hardcore fan base. And your hope is that the hardcore fan base goes out and tells their casual fan base friends, no, this is the better product. And then that's how you bring in more fans. But there isn't the financial means to market directly to the big fan base, casually speaking, to market on a network. You're not on a network right this second, right? As far as revenue streams are concerned, you're looking at merch, gate, and whoever is involved investment wise. At this point in time, the answer to the question is market, go the opposite way and find your niche inside of a niche, which it's been for years, even before AEW was formed. At the peak, right? TNA was the niche behind the niche. They had less resources, but they were on Spike, right where WWE used to be. There was no threat of competing directly with WWE at that time, in hindsight, in the way that they made you feel like it could be. But if you can get back to that spot where the hardcore fan goes, actually, this product is more fun for me. And then you talk to the casual fan and it's, wait a minute, you guys are watching that? Have you checked this out because of this and this and that? Storytelling wise, the talent's just as good. You should see how these guys and girls do it. By comparison, that to me is the best route to get back to success, especially given where the company's sitting at right now.
Absolutely. I think you made some phenomenal points there, Clark. And I think that's their best tactic. That's what they've got to do. They've got to try it. My fear still is that AEW has that market cornered, the hardcore fan base cornered. But here's the thing. They've been getting a little bit of criticism lately. If there was ever a time to try and snipe some of those, get some of those, it would be now.
Yeah.
So, listen, I think that's your best shot. I think you need to make it look different visually, improve production, which they're saying they're going to do, and also just cater to the hardcore fan. Because at the end of the day, a hardcore fan, if you have one hardcore and one casual fan in the same room, the hardcore fan will earn you more money because they're the ones who are buying merchandise, all of that. When you're AEW, WWE, casual fans very much matter. For Impact right now, they need to grab hold of those hardcore fans because they're more valuable to them because they're going to have less fans no matter what. So the hardcore fans is who they need to target. But on that note, that brings us up to the end of the show. I mean, I always really enjoy these Mailbag Monday shows, guys, so thank you so much for sending in your questions and commenting throughout the show. If you did enjoy, please leave us a thumbs up and subscribe on YouTube, a follow on Twitch, and a cheeky 5 stars over on Spotify. They are really appreciate it. They really help us out and help us continue to make content. If you haven't seen my video from yesterday talking about Hangman Page versus Swerve Strickland and their feud on our YouTube, that is up now. It's a commentary video. Make sure you guys go and check that one out. Thank you to Clark. Thank you to Shad for joining me here today. And we will be back tomorrow. Check the Instagram story for the time because it might be an hour later. We'll see you guys